Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Well, I'm going to paint that church, and I believe it's down in Louisiana. I purchased this photo, and I believe it was I purchased it a long time ago, and I've been promising all of you I was going to paint it, and so I believe it's down there. But anyway, I love it, and it has these beautiful eucalyptus trees up in the front and stuff, and it has set up on pedestals and stuff like this. So we're going to be talking about some architectural thing and how we paint. We're going to paint it kind of impressionistic, a little bit of what we call representational art to it, have some nice blurry edges, that kind of stuff, some real fun stuff. And I'll show you how I go about painting architecture like this, okay? So the board here is 24 inches this way. It's 16 inches this way. This is 1/4 inch thick birch ply. I like this. This is called a 7-layer ply, also known as a Baltic birch. It's a real stable, a little bit heavier type of surface, and I usually go to these types of surfaces when I go a little bit larger. It's just a super high quality 7-layer ply, which is just fantastic. And then I gave it a coat of the canvas prep medium, which you can use on wood and use on canvas. Just one coat of it, sanded it lightly, and I'm ready to go. And we'll start painting. My palette that I have out here is the Heritage. I'm going to paint with it quite a bit today using just straight acrylic. So I just squirt these right out to here. Now it's late in the afternoon here for us to be starting something like this, and at 6 o'clock I got to go to my granddaughter's piano recital. So I'm going to work on this, and then I'll take a break and we'll finish it up into the morning, so you'll get to see how I go about saving my colors, starting it back up and stuff. Okay, so it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, so the list of the colors that I have here, there'll be everything, the list of everything I use will be in the video description. If there's something you can't find and you need it, just drop a comment down below and I'll be happy to answer that for you, okay? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with this very much alla prima and put in the shadows, the deeper shadows. Now, I have a reference photo up there that you can see that I printed out. But my big thing is I have a 42-inch monitor here. And when I put it up here on the monitor, it is exactly the same size that I'm looking here. And I can see so much more detail. And so those of you that are in the memberships and stuff, I will put that high-resolution photo for you in the memberships, and you'll be able to download it and put it up on the monitor if you paint like I do. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of my older number 2-inch wide brush here, and I'm first going to start some sky. I'm going to take some of the sapphire. Now you also see I have some neutrals out here, which are really going to help me paint this painting here. But I'm going to take some sapphire and I'm going to lighten it up. I'm going to go to right around a 7 or an 8. So that is real close to an 8, so it'll dry to a 7. But I want it just slightly violet here. So I'm going to add just a touch of violet here. And we'll push this in. Now I'm going to have other colors. Now I want to go down through. I'm going to leave this slightly transparent so I don't disrupt my sketch, my drawing that I have on here. And the color that I put on here, this sapphire, is just a little bit violet. I'm going to go down even a little bit just in case I have what we call, or what we like to call, sky holes into our painting here. When I do stuff like this and I start it out like this, I like to constantly brush mix so my colors change a little bit. We might put a little bit of that phthalo in there as well. And just a bit of water. I'm just going to paint acrylic here for a bit. Yeah, I like that phthalo in there too. Works pretty good. But lift the pressure a little bit more transparent as you get down here. We're going to put some clouds and some other things into the sky. So I don't want to have a tremendous amount of brush marks. I do have some in there. I don't want to have a tremendous amount. We might even take some of this gray and just pop up some gray, because we're going to have some clouds up here. And I don't, when I'm putting color in, and you'll see me really do it here in a minute, then I'll lift the pressure here and soften it out. But when I'm putting color in, I like to have variations in it. So I know it's kind of hard to pick up, but there's a little gray, there's that little stuff in there. That's going to allow me to push some clouds and some violets and some other kind of stuff going on. But mainly we want to focus in and around here into the church. So We have that on, and that will look pretty good. Now, for the foreground that I come in here, I'm just going to rinse that brush in some water for just a second. You don't need to take it all out. Just rinse a little bit. For the foreground, I'm going to just take some medium beige, drop it right down in here into my blues. I love sapphire and medium beige for making grays. We're going to make some warm and cool colors up here into the front. Here, we might even add just a touch of this medium white, which is going to really help us in painting of the church here. We'll push that on. We'll push this through. And again, I'm going to, just be a little casual with this, pull this in some different directions. And, I'll go up into my church and stuff like that. When I'm painting like this alla prima, I'm not perfect with, all of my planes and stuff like that. I'll let them cross. I'll even take some of these colors down into my church. Just as long as you can see, all of the coloring that you have going on in here. Let's just take our paper towel and break that up a little bit. See how that just makes it, I now have basically the ground going up into the sky, which I love. Okay, and by having this, see this right here with these two working together with those grays, I make a beautiful connection between the medium beige and the blue into a landscape. And you'll see me do that in landscapes whenever I am working on to get distance. For example, the one that I was working on this morning, this is Winslow Homer. This is an idea or inspiration from Winslow Homer, an 1885 painting that he did, and fishing off the Grand Banks. And I used a lot more of the sapphires and beiges in this particular painting here. And then into the fog that you see back there, I make a connection between the sapphire and the beige, which makes you some beautiful grays, which really is a beautiful, for a landscape painter, those are beautiful connections because they take the blues and the grays right together into those colors, and they'll work together really nice. So that's basically what I did back there, and a lot of other things. But anyway, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and find my darks, find some darker colors that I have here, bushes and stuff like that. Now there's going to be some really great ones that have to go in here and make that nice connection. There'll be a dark bush and stuff right in here. Right along underneath the church there is going to be some dark colors. And then we'll have some real dark colors that you'll see up here in the front into those shadows. The cast shadows. Light's coming in this way. So, these cast shadows right into this dirt and right into this line, this is going to be our center of interest. These are all things that I kind of plan out, where I'm going to go, how I'm going to go about doing that, and so I have a pretty good idea. So I can do this with the 2-inch brush, which is what I do a lot, but I want to have some movement in this, so I'm going to go down to my 1-inch brush. I'm going to use some pine green and some burnt sienna, a little bit of blues into this as well. I'm going to use a lot of water, and I don't want to mix this up real well. And what I'm going to do here is, you can see how much water I have in here. I'm letting some of this just run just a bit, and that's okay here. And I want this movement of this color. When we go, later back, later into the painting, we're going to have all of these trees and all of this stuff going on up here. So I want to have, quite a bit of interest and stuff into the painting. And so I do that by running the colors really thin and placing them around here, and we can add a bit more heavier color right back down in here. But see how loose and stuff that is. Now, I drew this eucalyptus right up here, so I'm going to pull it back just a little bit. But look at what happens. See, you get that color, and already this eucalyptus wants to come forward. We can be a little careful right in here as we push in some of that church right there. Okay, and I know that this tree is going to go right up in through here, so I'll just lighten the pressure on my brush, just tap some of that through, and create that first, back look of maybe some bushes and stuff like that going in there. This is stuff that, I've done for quite a long time, but I've really started doing a lot more of this in the last few years as I've worked at becoming more casual. So I'm going to push these colors, and these colors just go, a little bit of running doesn't hurt anything. But look at that back to there. Those colors look fantastic in this type of painting when you're doing those, yellows and burnt siennas and greens, some reds in there. Get some of that modeling of the color where it's not, perfect, and we'll just push some of this back in there. This will really help us. There'll be another eucalyptus right in there here, so I'll bring this up pretty much where we're kind of covering up that eucalyptus. But look at this movement that we can have up here, right up through here. And just use your brush, and it's good to, I paint like a lot of the, Premier Coup, Alla Prima artists. Those of you that follow me a lot know I talk a lot about that. But, we we follow John Singer Sargent and use as large a brush as possible for some of the areas that we paint. And you can see this just makes real, rough kind of edges of where that tree's going to be right in there. And already starts a pretty good look here. We'll be able to have more stuff going on, but this will, that kind of starts it. Now, let's not drop that into the water yet, Dave. Let's take some of that burnt sienna, some of that green right up through here, model that in the brush, maybe a touch of blue, a little bit of that phthalo blue, right along the bottom, underneath the house here. Let's just do this underneath the house, underneath the church here. Probably going to call this a house several times today. Let's just drop some of that color right along like that. That'll be a good, sometimes pull down, up and down there. That'll keep that color right in there. Let's pull just a bit of that. Even though this is up front, we're going to want it kind of cooler. We'll pull some of that color in. This is your first look, guys. Everything that I'm going to do here is pretty much going to cover up. Especially as and I just touched extender, I didn't need to do that. As we go into our, picking out our colors and stuff here, most of this will cover up. But the shadows, usually when you're doing an alla prima, and you've heard me say this a lot of times, when you approach an alla prima, it's thick, it's opaque in the highlights, transparent into the shadows. So I like this kind of transparency. Even though this is thicker here, it's still what we consider a transparent. And that little line right there is not real good, so we'll break that just a bit. See, that's just that little color, little motion, a little bit there. That just works. And this is going to have some movement here. It'll just help us see it, but we're going to stay kind of transparent. Then as we build, and we build that church, and we build the eucalyptus and stuff up here, we're going to have more opaque colors and stuff coming in, and that will work really nice, I think. Okay, so let's go through, and this is my 1-inch brush. Let's go in and let's block in. Now, the roof up here onto we're going to paint it multiple times. It's more of a real red. They have a real red, but I'm going to go more burnt sienna right now and some red, some Naphthol Red Light here. And basically it has a lot of what we call the pulling up and down of it here, but I'm going to work side to side as well. And I'm going to be a little precise right now as I'm blocking in, and just a little bit transparent here as I'm finding those angles and stuff there. And then I'm going to blur it later, okay? I'm going to take some of that off and blur it and not be too precise right now, towards the end of the painting here. But I'm going to just kind of block in what this needs here. And a bigger brush, a lot of people used to ask me, how do you get some of that, more accurate? The larger brush you use, the more accurate it cuts a line. And that doesn't make sense, but it's very true. And I took some lessons from a beautiful painter and striper down in Argentina. And when I was down there judging an art show one year, and I just happened to be able to study at the studio of this Argentine master. And basically it was like the more hair that sits down onto the surface, the less wiggling your hand does. So when you got to cut a line or something like that, if you can go as large a brush as possible, a small brush wiggles really easy. A larger brush doesn't, because it has more resistance against the surface. So if you have to do some things, it's better to try to get the power, if you can, with that larger brush wherever possible here, getting some of that in. Now there's some other things that we'll do to blur this all up, because it's a little precise right now, but I'm just going to drop in a little bit of this color, and let's get a little more burnt sienna, sometimes maybe a little yellow with that, so it changes the color up here, especially on this little entrance roof here. We'll tap a few little things going on. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on. But later on up here, it's also, it has these roof panels, these tin roof panels. And, some of them it's more gray in color. And I think that adds to the church. But I don't want to, add too much interest there to the church. So I'm going to take some gray, maybe some burnt or some medium beige here. And I'm just going to streak in some of this color in here for right now. And I'll go back and forth a bit, because that's how we're basically going to paint it. But I'll leave some of the streaks in like that. Now, when you step back and you look at it, okay, it catches some of the feeling here, but I don't want to paint it like that. I'm just moving some of these colors in. I'm going to end up painting this with a lot of texture and a lot of colors coming on. So I just want to capture right now, or what a lot of Premier Coupe painters call the poster block painting part of it. Just blocking in some of the colors, yes, adding the interest and stuff, but blocking it in so that I can continue. I mean, I get a good feeling for, what the composition is going to look like. Now, let's take this and let's add a little bit of blue to our burnt sienna in this, maybe even a little bit of green. What this does is grays it down, tones it down a bit. And as we come back here, we're going to push this little one back in here. And it'll be not quite as bright. It's going to be into the shadow here. So you can make beautiful, if you use burnt siennas and those reds, the Naphthol Red Light, a beautiful complement that grays it down right away is the blues, because it's more of a red-orange, and so blues is almost a perfect complement. You can see that grays that down quite nice right in there. Now there'll be some sunstruck areas there that might be a bit brighter, and we can just maybe hit a little bit of that brightness right up here. We'll add some of that later, but you can see just a little bit of that brightness. Might take some of this gray right down in here where we're going to have the shadow from some of the trees hitting the roof there. We're just going to paint it like this, just real casual, and get some of those colors in there when it's going to go. It's going to be fun. This is going to be a fun painting. Because I don't do too much architecture with you guys, even though I do like painting it here like this. So we'll just drop that, using that larger brush when as possible. There helps you with those edges and stuff. Yeah, just right along those lines. So that gives you a good call. Now, what we're going to do is light comes in through here. The church is a yellowish kind of a church, which means really when we go to paint it, we'll be painting with a lot of complements too. Some of the violets, some of the blues and the violets, and we'll have some other colors in there. But up into the light area is going to be almost a white. Okay, so we got... So plan out your colors, plan out some of the stuff. Oh, there's a little red door in there. Let's just drop that in here. Let's find a smaller brush here, like a little number 8, 6 or an 8 here. And we'll just drop that little arched door right in there. Just wiggle that in there for right now. We'll fix some of that. We'll fix some of that a little bit later. There's going to be shadows pulling across that. Sometimes, if I'm looking at something like this is going to have that shadow, I'll just go ahead, that's going to pull across the shadow from the little entrance here. You know, I'll just go ahead and maybe add some of that, you know, right now so that I see where those colors are going to be. If I can do it pretty easy. It's not a big thing, but I do like to add some of that stuff in as I'm doing that sometimes just to see. All right, so let's go in and again back to our big brush here. So I start out, and I know sometimes for some of you like the 1-inch brush here is a little bit uncomfortable, but when you're starting out, as large a brush as possible is, you know, is the key to painting something like this. Okay, so let's the church, you know, we can look at our yellows here. Might be a bit bright, so we can add some medium beige to that. Take it down towards its browns. We'll just add some water for right now here, and we'll thin this out because we'll start out before we add the real lights to it. We'll start out with envisioning this just mostly like a shadow. So I'm gonna just do this, and I'm just gonna paint through some of my smaller architecture here. And I'm pulling across. This is good. This little church has clapboard sides on it here. And so I'll pull across here to give that. Every once in a while, though, we're going to want to have some verticals and horizontals here. But mostly it's got these clapboard sides that, you know, we're gonna emulate here by pulling our brush across. The majority of it will be pulled across here. Okay, so right down here, and I'm just going to go ahead and pull right through the arch windows and all of that right now as I put that all on. And sometimes it's best like this just to be nice and casual and get the color into that area and then come back working your detail. You know, it's just, and it works so well like that. So that's the basic of the colors. Let's get some of this down in here. Now we're going to change it, warm it, cool it, highlight it. You know, all of these tones here, because we'll have different you know, shadows and stuff like that hitting it. And I forgot just a little bit of the shadow red right over here. So we'll drop just a bit of that in there. There we go. And then I'll come in here and we'll lighten up. We'll lighten up this color. Let's go up to like a value 8 or so here. So that's real close to a 9, so it'll dry. We know the acrylics dry, a little darker and stuff to it. And let's just pull some of this through. Now, you got to be careful. The more white you add, the more opaque that color becomes. So I got to, you know, I don't want to lose too much of my windows. I can still kind of see them through there. And I drew them once, I'll draw them again. But if I just back it out just a bit with my paper towel, that'll help. Here, we're going to have real light right up here into this front corner right here. Now this will get painted several times here. So, you know, we're doing this just for various of color, okay? So this little area here gets pretty light. Pull across a bit so you get those clapboard sides there. That look of that just a bit. There's just a little light hitting back here, so I'm just going to kind of tap that in, and a little bit of the light hitting back here. We'll be more specific painting the light and shadow on that little building back there. Okay, but that gives you a kind of a real neat, and you look at here, okay, 20 minutes we're blocking in here, 20 minutes, and look at how fun that we're getting some of this painting here. Let's take some of this light where we have this, we'll add some more beige to this, we'll lighten maybe even a little bit of this medium white, and let's see, there's going to be this is part of like the road right there, so there'll be some lighter grass here. So we'll just take this, see, and I'm just going to blur this across just to keep that light coming right up through here. There's going to be a band, a real nice light band. And so I'll add some of that I see. I look for the painting when I started out, and this is a real good thing, guys. You look for the painting through to your light and darks. Where are your light and darks on the painting? And that's what you want to kind of get into position here. So I want to be, here's grab some more medium white here and just drop that in. Move a few, put a nice horizontal, couple of verticals, scumble that around a bit there like that. So we just get some of that color in there. Some light green, light yellow green here, which is the grass and stuff up here in this. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and pull it mostly a vertical across here, and that's a little bit too kind of Easter eggy kind of color there. Let's model that up a bit more. That's better. And we'll pull some of that through. I'm looking where that is going here. It's going to go right up, and it's going to hit some of these shadows, but it's going to go right up back through here as well. The color, so some of this will be painted out by shadow in just a bit, but I'm going to, and it has more of a line there like the road right there. Now that's a little bit too even. I'm just going to take some light and some yellow oxide and some of my medium white and just kind of pull through. I like this, breaking things up. I don't like to have solid bands of color in the initial stages of a painting because they can, it looks boring to it. So I try to always paint as loose as possible here, so I get lots of little color interest and stuff there. Okay, so we have that, and that comes with time. But so I try not to paint too long with the same color. Does that make sense? Okay, especially when you're doing something like this with a landscape, and especially in a building, you can make that building just a big block if you work too long with the same color. Okay, so we vary that up a bit. All right, so there's gonna be a lot that we still have to do here on the building, but that helps us. But I'm kind of interested, and in many times if I find something in a painting that I find that it's just gonna be super fun to paint, I'll jump into it. I'll block in and then I'll jump into it. And I think that this big, huge eucalyptus here is going to be a lot of fun to paint. I'm going to start out with some of my yellows and medium beiges, my yellow oxide medium beiges and medium white. And I'm just going to kind of model those together up here. That's where I'm going to kind of start here, pushing this in. So it's going to, and that's going to be a good harmony color. And I just added an extra branch, so that's okay. That's going to be a good harmony color here with the building too. But the building will eventually be lighter stuff to it. So change the color up a bit here. Let's drop some of this nice light here, right down through here like this. I just love the coloring on these. And I tried to find exactly what kind of eucalyptus. When we lived down in the south, we had eucalyptus trees and stuff. And, this is very much like I'm not sure. I'm not, how many different varieties there are. And then all the time we spent in Australia, which has even more. That's fun times down there too. But might be a cedar gum or something. I'm not real sure here. But it's just a real pretty tree here. So I'm going to grab some of this and not copy it exact, but I do love the working of the bark here. So I'll push some of that color in. Some of this will come up through here. Okay, and I'm going to put another one back in here, maybe even another one beyond that, because I do love some of that coloring that comes across here. So we'll pull some of this here, right in there like that, down. Now we'll switch over to our burnt sienna, and I'm going to have some yellows. I love the Diarylide Yellows when I'm painting this with that, and a little bit of the green over here as well, and sometimes a little bit of the red. When you're painting those, you get those. So that'll be the modeling colors here that I'll use on to the other side here, that I'll model up, and we're going to paint this several times to get some of this interest. And it actually, here it looks very red there on the photo, but in the monitor there you can see that some of this older bark, before it starts peeling away, there goes more of a gray. So we can have some of that grayed, little sapphire into that. Remember, we grayed that burnt sienna colors with those sapphires, and that's kind of pretty right down, and that'll come right down through there. See, you're going to get those changes of these colors, these tones there, and that's what's going to make it super fun to paint here. And you don't blend these out. You leave these bands of color just like that, you know, on these trees. And we'll pick up that color, draw a little bit more here. This one stays mostly this color, so we'll put a bit of a whisper of those burnt siennas in there, and just some striped little colors of it right there, and sometimes thin on the brush, sometimes wider on the brush here. That's pretty good. Here we'll model that, and then we'll get a bit of the darker blue as we get down here, because this will be down into the shadow down here. So we'll push some of that color on. We got a long ways to go on this, but this will be this is going to be a fun tree to paint. And I'm envisioning it with some textures and stuff like that. But see, as I work these tones together, see, I'm just painting acrylic, and I'm just sliding these tones together, and the fusion brush does it so well. It's not a stiff brush, it's a very soft brush, so it works these together really well here, those tones. And so it's nice for incorporating acrylics together. So it's a good brush for that. And so we'll work a little bit of the edges here like this. Okay, down. That'll be pretty good. Now we'll tone this yellows down, some more beige, maybe a bit of the blues, darker browns. How do you get darker browns? Browns really come from the burnt sienna and green. That makes beautiful browns. Look at the brown you get here. So to paint that eucalyptus into the back here, and I might have 2 or 3 back here. Now that's real close to the color I have, so I could go a little bit lighter here. We want it to poke out just a bit. Now we're going to soften all these bushes back through here too, so you know, we'll poke some of this up and through. We'll see some of the tree, but other branches and trees and stuff will come into there. Let's grab some of the browns, some of this burnt siennas in here. We'll just touch some of those in. So I'll quiet down some of this green, so we'll be able to see this one back here a bit more. But see, now I know I have to do it because I'm just seeing some of that now. Okay, so I know I have to do it. Let's put maybe one more. Not space them perfectly apart. Maybe put these two a little closer together here. And we'll work some more up into that. That's good for right in now. But you can take some of your greens, some burnt siennas that we have here, and you can work like this, pushing back. That's just not enough green. Let's get some more green, maybe a bit of yellow into that here. Model this up. See all this? This is good landscape colors right in here. We'll push some of that through. I don't want to get a solid color, so I want to kind of tap and wiggle my brush a little bit here. Get some of those colors in there. Some of that can come right in here, right like that. And you can see how that starts to especially push this one farther forward. It tells me about it. It tells me I could have a little bit more light, you know, on these back eucalyptus back here, which I'll do. But I just want to break up, so it takes away just a bit of that brush movement. Brush movement's very important, but you see, you can still see all of that movement in there. That is key, guys. You got to keep that in there. You got to keep that. Let's take some of that light and reinforce that light. See, I like to just drag my brush because it leaves a little bit of paint, a little bit of texture, and it leaves that nice fractured edge back there. Like that's just going to be a little edge, maybe some yellows back there. If I was really quick landscape painting here, we're going to take a little more time with this one, but really quick landscape painting in there. See, that makes a real nice edge real fast. Here, let's take some the greens. This is going to be a different kind of a tree right here, so we'll just take a few ideas here of some of the branches and stuff going out. We'll fill in some leaves and fun things like that, but just a bit of our browns and greens here. So we'll push just a little movement onto that tree there, and maybe some, other movements right back in here, just with your smaller brush. Now we did the larger brush, now we can do a little bit of the smaller brush, some of that movement. That's what you want to leave, though, is that movement that we have there. Let's take some of this browns and just a chisel of my brush here and kind of mark out some of this. Now this tree is like it's dead almost, or you're just coming into the, maybe this is more in the fall colors here, so this one loses some of its branches and stuff. So we'll bring that down. Now this one's going to come right down here, right down into the front, in front of that one. This will pull down, right down in here. We'll put grays and some other things. It's got a lot that's really going to kind of go on this tree here. But you see, I just kind of bend them and pull some different angles and stuff. We might put a few leaves and stuff into it or so here, just to get some more interest. That's your choice. You can use these buildings and stuff, and then put them at any time of the year or so that you want. And we have a different one up over here, and so we'll just block that in it. And I'm not gonna, I could make this a eucalyptus here, or it's kind of hard to see in the photos, like an old oak, or so might leave it at that, so that we have that different types of trees and stuff coming in there. So might just leave that one, and a little trunk of a darker one right back there. But if I'm painting real quick, like you might pick up just some more bushes and movements and stuff back through here, I just might do this. That just adds some of the interest and movement. Of course, we'll push it back with bushes and stuff like that, but that just makes some nice interest and movement. And like one of the things that's really kind of nice, there's one in here that crosses that light plane, and it's a small little bush right here, and so we'll indicate some of that. Let's take some of our lighter greens, yellow greens. Even though this is all going to go really cool, we'll add some of these blues and stuff here, just some water, and we'll just scumble right into here. So we'll see, we'll maybe pick up, I don't want to paint too long with the same color, so pick up some yellows. We'll work that through here, and a little bit more of our greens here, up like that. Okay, and sometimes I'll just tap this through right like this with my paper towel to break the edges, to transparent it up a bit, and that's where that other bush is going to sit right in front of that corner there of the church. So here we're on 35 minutes into the painting. We've got it pretty much a good block in. Now there's a few other areas of like trees and stuff. There's a big rounded back eucalyptus back here that's in the very back that we'll poke through. And one of the things is you can leave some light holes there, we call sky holes in there, or you can take some out. I want to have some variations of some of these trees, some of the heights and colors and stuff like that. So that's what's going to make it real nice. So you got some different undulations. That's what I look for. It's not just a perfectly rounded little thing there. So you got some different undulations, and we'll look for that. Let's widen this out just a bit here. There we go. And then as you work, what we're going to do is we're going to work like on this eucalyptus here with a lot of these colors and override them a bit. I'm excited about painting this guy. It's been a while since I've painted one of these eucalyptus like this, and they're just a whole heck of a lot of fun to get those colors back and forth like that. All right, so let's take a bit of our lighter yellow browns here, beiges, and I'm just going to block in. There's going to be a light side and a shadow side here as I'm looking through these, and there'll be some shadow ones in there as well, but these are the little foundation pillars there of this guy. There'll be some dark ones in there as well, and we're just going to emulate them here, because we're going to paint some sides to them, you know, so you have a light plane and a side plane. Just a little bit, just to say we did it here. That's all we're going to do here. And there we go. Carry some of those colors, work that through. Let's take some of this dark burnt sienna blue kind of color here. Let's add a bit of water here, and we'll come right into here into the windows, the arch windows, and we'll pull down here. Now, try not to make it a solid color. So I'll pull across here, even touch it a few times, so it's not a solid color. It's just a dark color here. And they look almost blue-black into the photo, but you know, we'll leave a little color variation here. And I'll fracture the edges. This is what I call fracturing the edges there. It's not perfect. You don't want to get a real perfect edge right now, because we want this kind of fracturing edges to keep the whole painting here just a little bit softer here. Okay. Now let's add, so that's that brown color up here. Let's add a little bit of blue. And we're just going to go, I decided I'm going to go do this right now. And it's kind of a bluish gray kind of color. And I'm just going to do it now just so I see it here. But this is the shadow from the roof down onto the clapboard sides here of the little church. And I'm just going to pull that across right there so I see where that shadow is. And in the photo and stuff, this one right up here especially is a nice clean line. But I don't want to be too clean and precise. I want to fracture the edge. So I lift the brush, just scumble just a bit. And we're going to paint the clapboard sides and stuff. But sometimes adding these lights and shadows when you're working on, you know, especially architectural paintings, I'll look for the light and shadow. And as early as I can. So see what happens to that. Look at that. It lifts the roof and it separates that and gives you a little bit more architectural interest, you know, to the painting here. And it doesn't take very long. It just takes a second or so to do that. And it's a good thing to, let's push that edge of this in, fracture that just a bit. Fracture that edge so it's not perfect. And there's that other little bit of it there, which is kind of nice. Now, when we go to do some of these other architectural things, we'll have some other shadows and stuff, so there'll be a nice, so where's your shadows? Kind of take a real thin application. This is a cool color, brown and the blues. The brown was the burnt sienna and the green, and some blues to help cool it off here. And this can help you just see some of your shadow areas here. Okay, now, and I might end up being more precise, you know, on that. I'm going to see how the painting evolves here. But I just lift it up and scumble a bit, pull that across that way a bit. I try to, you know, I'm not being too perfect right now because I like these things to cross. I like these colors and everything that we do here to kind of cross each other and everything, okay? So that shows up in there. That is a real good time here to stop. I'm going to stop for just a second, and for those of you in the membership, I'll take a step photo of this so that you can come back and you can see this is what I consider the block in. and then we'll come back. So I'll take a step photo of this. We'll come back, work on the sky a little bit more, and then come up into the front of the painting and put a little bit more on the building before I have to go to my granddaughter's piano side, okay? All right, I'll be back in just a second. Okay, everyone, I took a nice step photo of that for the members. For those of you that are members, I'll put it on the community page so you have that. So when you continue your block in. Now, let's work, before we go work the building, let's go work a little bit more into the sky. Find some of the colors that I want. Now, this is, this where I have here is dried up. And if you want to work with it, if you're working with the Heritage, if you take a damp paper towel like this and just start, it'll reconstitute. Sometimes it takes a little bit of rubbing here, but it'll reconstitute your paint. You could even paint with this again. Use this paint. You can do this for a few hours. You know, after that, you have to kind of like it because the paint dries. But the paint takes a full 28 hours for it to really kind of cure under normal conditions. So you have, during that time, you can reconstitute it with water and you know, use it. And I use these types of things, I mean, and clean it up a bit here. Clean up your palette a bit. Use your, you know, so you don't waste your, you know, tearing off a new palette or whatever. But I do these kinds of things. I use those properties of the paint, being able to reconstitute with water for all different kinds of techniques. But let's come in here. Let's put that brighter little sky blue in there. So we'll add some phthalo this time, which will give us our real bright. Let's go a little lighter and a little brighter here. So some white and some phthalo. Let's look at our value. I'm up to almost a 9, which will dry to about an 8. Let's take a look at this. So we're going to come back through here, and even right through where I did some of this earlier, the tree and stuff. Yeah, I paint through stuff like this, guys, all the time. And let's just add a few little marks of that. I paint through stuff that gives me an idea. And here's one of the good reasons why. Because people always ask, well, aren't you wasting time doing that? No, you're an artist. And when you're an artist, you paint it through. And what you're doing is you're putting that impression of that tree into your mind. And you don't need it there, but you need that impression there. That's what you need more than anything else, is that impression. Let's put a nice dose of that blue right in there. And so I know what that tree's going to look like. I know I painted it there before. It's going to look fine when I get into that part of it. And so, you know, I don't worry about covering things up. You know, it's like you see me paint in roses and do it all the time. Now let's put a little bit more blue up through here. We know from good atmospherics of sky, it goes a little bit more blue as it gets a little bit darker value as it gets a little higher. So we'll just work some of these colors, these edges together here. And this is what makes a beautiful painting, is when you cross your edges and do those kinds of stuff. So here we'll take that up. Now, I can do this, you know, I can use wet. I can go back and get some of that gray and stuff, which I'm going to do in a moment. But if you're just softening stuff out, just take your paper towel with the water, just like I showed you on your palette, and just run through like this. And see, I can even run through and push some of that brighter color back down over here if I wanted to. Or I can remove back and see some of the tree if I wanted to do that, which I don't. I'm just going to push some of this color in. See, I'll work these edges. I'm an edge painter. I'll work these edges here. Push some of these brighter blues right back up in there like that, so you see a bit of that color and stuff coming through. I want the reference photo has these beautiful kind of violety grays here. So I'll take some gray, some blue, some violet, kind of clouds. And I like that afternoon violety gray clouds. We get them here out in the prairie in Nebraska here as well. And they're just wonderful. And this is really going to help as I do this eucalyptus here. We'll push some of these grays right out here like that. So get some of those other colors into the sky there. So, you know, when I paint like this, guys, and this is the one thing, that a lot of people say, okay, you know, what's the next step to become an artist? Well, when I was a younger painter, I'd be afraid to paint into stuff, and because I'll disrupt it and won't be able to do again. No, you've got to be able to go back and forth into these edges like this and work colors, what we call edges, back and forth, because that's what's going to make it pretty. See, I can take some of that gray in and soften some of these back edges and actually make the receding area of a tree here, or pop some of that blue right into here that's going to become a sky hole later. Okay, and I know it seems sometimes, you know, it seems like, oh, you know, that's just a little bit of a waste, but it isn't. It's really a true artist is not afraid to go back in there, and that's what really creates a lot of interest. Let's take a bit of the brighter blue right in there, just right through that, right into that area there, so it's creating more interest into the sky, maybe a bit brighter, maybe even a bit of the gray, because the horizon line gets a little bit grayer. And let's just push a bit of that right in there, that nice gray. Maybe some of that can come right into those edges. See those crossing of those edges. Don't be afraid to do that. You see me do that in landscapes where I want to have a lot of depth. I do that all the time. Okay, now let's work just a bit. Let's even put a little bit of medium white into that, and we'll work just an idea here of a cloud or two here. Maybe make one right out here, and I'll do this a few times. There's a beautiful set of the light clouds, maybe a bit of gray right up here along the edge of the house or the church that really help pop it forward, and I kind of like that, so I'll do that there. We'll just let that, and see I got that beautiful edge there that I'm just gonna blur out like that. That's gonna help me so much in this painting here. Don't be afraid of those edges here. Don't be afraid of painting out and losing those edges here. Let's just push a bit of that right back in there. So we'll leave a bit of the sky hole there. Let's just soften that a bit. Right back into some nice soft movement. Maybe a bit more color right up here. So I'll get this cloud right up in here. And there we go. And just the idea of that cloud right up in there. And we'll build some more light, and you know, towards the end of the painting we'll probably come back and do this again, which will give you even more beautiful looks. And you can, you know, come back in. You see me come back in before with little blues and little light colors, you know, and hit certain areas as I paint clouds. Those of you that studied some of that stuff with me. And here below we're just going to do it kind of simplistic, but see, it's just and I don't want to get the sky looking, and you look back there what that looks like. I don't want to get the sky looking super fantastic right now until I get a few more things on. But we can just dribble a little bit of the clouds there. That'll make a nice looking sky, a little bit of that gray right up there like that. Just soften that out with your paper towel or a different brush. You could use your hand. You've seen me do that before. I'll even take some of these little grays and blues and scumble right through some of that tree. And if it doesn't move too well for you, put a little water in it and watch what happens. See, it moves really easy. But it just, so now I've got this receding edges of these trees, see? Really easy. And let's just recede those right through there, some sky holes and that kind of stuff. So I know it sounds ridiculous, but because being a left-brain, logical, analytical painter, when I first saw artists doing that, I was like, you're crazy. You're just increasing the amount of work you have to do. But you're not. You're actually creating some really interesting edges, and you're actually creating objects back here that have really been pushed back and really atmospheric. So it really does work. And we're going to want to also, one of the things towards the end of the painting that we're going to want to do is take some of these blues, some of these other colors. We must not forget to do that. And sometimes I do, but carry some of those colors through, because that harmonizes our whole painting. Okay? All right, so there we've got what that is kind of going to look like there. Let's take some of our burnt sienna, some of our red, and we'll come right back up here and we'll drop right along the edge there. Now see, this time I'm going to allow some of that blue and that edge to be broken. I'll maybe bring it, rotate over onto my chisel here so I get a little bit more of an edge there. But see, you can see that broken little edge. Sometimes I'll just take that off like that. You can see that broken little edge, and that is the artistic edge that we start to look for. So we might want it a little more defined up into the front, but in some of these other areas we want to kind of break it up a bit here. So we'll, now that's just I feel that a back edge, a receding edge on something has to be some more of that blurriness to it. So I'm going to take a little bit of blue, some of my blues, browns, some of those gray, those tree colors that are here. Just model some of that stuff up into my brush and break that edge right there. So you can't find that edge. Not quite as easy, see? It's softening it back out, which is going to cause it to recede. How do you know, those of you who painted a lot of landscapes with me, I always tell you, you recede those edges by making it more like the background. Well, here you look at what is here. We've got some of these greens. We're going to have these blues of the sky here. So I'll just blur that in, those colors in, lose that edge just a bit. So that causes that edge of the church to recede. And right here where I had that nice cloud, that nice light edge right in there, that's going to come forward pretty nice there, like I kind of wanted. And you know, that kind of works. So let's take a little burnt sienna and a little bit of blue here, some of these reds, and right across. Now this is, I showed you this, those of you that have watched the ship, and remember what I say about my videos on here, guys. Watch them all, because I show you techniques in one that you can then go apply to the other. So this is the little board that I use. It has the blocks on it, and I use it anytime I want to make something you know, really that is architectural, or it has a little bit you know, better structure to it. So these panels on the roof, when you can't really see it on the photo, but in the photo it really shows up, and right about halfway you can really see a line of the shadow line of those panels. And so I'm just going to take this edge of this ruler here, and I'm not going to do a solid line. I'm going to just drag it a couple of times to break it up there, so I can create this shadow line of the roof panels right there. And I'll blur it out just a bit there, but that's where that shadow line comes. And there'll also be some coming this way. So, but the smaller ones here, you can, and they don't line up like that. Any good roofer knows that. You overlap them a little bit. But I'll have just a few of them here. I'm just going to just whisper a few of them, of the ideas on there, just to break that up. Now we're going to do that with the clapboard siding as well here. But it's just to break that up a bit. Let's take a little red, a little bit of burnt sienna, and we'll drop just a bit. You're gonna see me use the brush very flat here and create some of this scumbling and stuff here, colors. I'll be painting right up by that. I don't want to go too far in the sky, but a little blurry edge is not bad. Blurry edges are not bad. So we'll push that on. Now let's get back towards some of those grays, maybe a little bit of the medium beige in that gray, which will help warm that up here. And we'll pull down here some of these grays to suggest those gray panels there up into the front. This is what we want to do. We don't want to use perfect color here by any manner of means, but we want to override the colors, and we want these fractured edges, which means I'm using the color fairly stiff, not real dry, and I'm going to be doing it a few times so that the color does not blend super well. I don't want it to blend super well. Burnt sienna, a little bit of that blue. Let's put this one in as well, You could stop anywhere in here. But see that little bit of fracturing? Makes it look a touch older here. And so we'll pull some down here like that. We're going to do this several times. This is what's going to give a lot of interest to the painting, is doing it a few times here to bring that in. Let's bring this one in. So I'll put on some gray, then I'll pull down some reds and stuff, and I'll put on some more grays and pull some of those down. But you can see immediately that's going to give you some interest. And see, into the other parts up here, there's going to be just little bits of that gray and stuff showing through. So we're going to just add some of that and then paint the reds back up on top of that. The burnt sienna reds back up on top, back and forth with this to create some of that roof coloring that you see. So you'll see the breaking of some of those colors and stuff here. And I'm going to do this a lot, so I'll be tapping along, sometimes pushing up, dragging, pushing up like this. Here, some of these colors here, like that, okay? And some of those colors right up here at the top, here. Break those lines, pull those down, break those lines. That's what gives that nice rough look to that roof of this church here. And I hold my brush in all kinds of different ways to get all kinds of effects, different types of effects here. And there like that. That's kind of a neat. Sometimes put that yellow in there, Diarylide or yellow oxide. Push a little bit of that warmer color in there. You can see that, and we'll repeat that a few times. But see, that does a couple of things. Harmonizes also with the church itself. But that might be a bit bright. We'll have to wait. If it is, you just go back with a little burnt sienna, sometimes a little bit of green into that burnt sienna, and just pull through, and that just tones it down. But that toning down gives you that other. And look at how much interest that starts to add there. And that little tone, though, be the artist. That little tone, carry it to different parts of your painting. The artist carries their colors, touches their colors through, carries their colors to different parts of their painting. Be the artist. Okay, let's go back with a bit more of that gray, a little lighter gray. Just the gray by itself, maybe, and a little bit of that dirty burnt sienna in our brush here. And see, now, slightly different tone. Look at the little bit different interest we get onto the roof. Let's get some of that yellow and stuff in with that gray. So your colors change a bit here. Find those angles. Stroke that angle here. Leave. Stop every once in a while right at that break mark that we put on. So you see that shadow mark. There's some areas there I could redefine that shadow mark. If I need to, I can just take a little dark and redefine some of that shadow mark. Or if I feel one is a little bit too wide, I'll just come right up next to it there, push it out of the way a bit and pull down so that shadow mark gets a little smaller. This is some of the detail work here that each artist will decide how much time and effort they're going to put into that detail on their painting, But you can start getting individual panels, that kind of stuff. So I'll work on that a bit like that, working those colors back and forth. I like to use the small flats like this. I like to think architecturally here, the lines. I'm a big advocate for getting the perspective correct on your buildings, and that's what you should do. And I love casual painting, but you need to get the perspective and stuff on it correctly. And I told that to one of my students once in one class. Her perspective was off, and I said, you got to correct it right here to here. She got so angry, she left. I was just like, wow, I made all kinds of mistakes, and we all do, but perspective is really important in painting, especially painting architecture. You have to make sure you get your perspectives correct here. So I'll work that. See, and I'll work some of these edges. And I'll make that old, and I'm going to turn some of this building a little bit older than what it may be in the photos here. And some of this, though, I don't like to do it wet. See that blending I get when I do it wet like that? So I'll wait for it to dry just a bit here, and come back and put some of that on here like that. There we go. Just like that. Oh, took off too much of that. Sometimes too much of a casual finger. But see, I got that light, and this front part, let's keep it. It's not white. That's one good reason to have the medium white here. A little bit of yellow and medium white here. And I really should be holding my hand in here when I do this. And I not only want to tap with it, I want to tap against it. This is what gives you some of that interest, that color interest there, as you're putting on that front fascia board here, like this. Okay, so you want to tap along the line, tap across it every once in a while. That's going to help you with the interest of your fascia board. And you can always use this right on the edge to help you draw that nice, you know, a little bit straighter line. But I want this to blur just a bit, so I'll put it on, and I'm going to drag my finger through it there to blur that. But it has to be perspective-wise. Keep your perspective. Make sure you're close enough before you blur it, okay? In other words, you've got a good line before you start to blur it, so that you can keep that nice perspective there, okay? So I'll work that. And there's some light little lines that you might want to put in there, and that's all up to you. I'm going to go a little bit more gray. So this, I did it a little bit wet, so it took out some of the gray, and I'm going to want to keep some of that gray right there. And I lost a bit of that shadow line there, so I'll want to push that back. And so I'll just take some brown, a little bit of brown. Let's come right back on that line there. Just touch the corner of my brush right there and just put in a little whisper of that shadow line here. Sometimes you can do it with you can do it with your brush, just freehand and stuff, but make sure that you've got a good steady hand. You want this dragged, you know, a lot of things we want to do, we want these dragged edges and stuff, so those edges break up, you know, and stuff, but we don't want to get it crooked, because that's bad perspective. So follow the perspective correctly. Let's push just a bit of that here up, like that. There. Blue that around just a bit. That'll be pretty good. It's going to take me several times here on this roof and some of that detail there to get that exactly the way I want to get some of those colors, because I'm going to want to take even some of the yellows and stuff that we have here and push them right back up into that roof panel, so I carry some of the building color down into the roof panel as well. So you see just a little bit of it here and there. Now, as we come up here, let's go to we don't want to do white. The trim really around the windows right in here are white, and as a matter of fact, and you know, pure white is something that I don't like to use in the painting except for shines. So I'm going to add just a tiny bit of yellow. But let's put a real nice, like a value 9 light right up here. And you can just use the edge of your board here like this, and just make sure you get a nice light. And I like to use the chisel of my flat here. So this light will tell me just about how light I'm going to go on that building. And I do it a few times. This is what gives it its interest. You know, and sometimes I'll just use the edge of the board to help steady my hand and tap it like that. You see, so, and I know it's kind of hard to tell, but you get these highs and lows of the color that really, really make it nice. Now, this is where you hold your breath a little bit, because I can hardly see. I'm trying to stay out of the trying to stay out of the way of the camera, but I'm in the camera a little bit, but you know, when you're trying to do that stuff here. But you can see that. But see, if I do it with my hand, then I have to rest my hand, and thank God for acrylics, that I can rest my hand and slide it right along that edge there to push that light on the other side there. But you try to get some of that. See, it's that, and this was big for me, guys. You get that little bit of highs and lows. So it's not a perfect light color all the way down like an outline. You get a little bit of highs and lows. And there's some arches to it. I'm probably going to do it with a little filbert, some arching and stuff like that there that we can do. But let's take some, so that's as light as I want to go. So some of this other is just going to be like a medium white. And right down the side here of the building here, right here, the corner has, the edge of the clapboard has a decorative edge here, which will be that nice light. And maybe we can even lighten that up a bit more, because medium white's a value 7, so we just don't want to go to a 10. So a little bit of white. Yeah, see, that looks kind of nice. Tap that along the edge there a bit, so it's not super perfect there. That's the little decorative edge. And then coming out of that, when I start to suggest the clapboard sides here, I'll just pull across. Now, as I paint the front of this, I do this. I use quite a bit of paint here, and I'm going to pull a few verticals, a few horizontals, but I want to leave some of that other little coloring that we see in here. So this is what's going to be important when you're painting architecturally like this, is we're going to pull across like this to give the indication of the clapboard sides, and we will of course, you know, we can add some small little lines, but I want to get these nice strong horizontal strokes like this. That's going to give the feeling of the clapboard sides there. But so I'm using, you know, you could use a smaller brush. The thing is the size of the brush, how much of the clapboard size you're going to put on in the details. That's all going to go to the overall, the whole look of the building here. But I can come back later, and just like I did here, I can touch a few little shadows into there that will give it some of its nice interest. But as I start to pull some of these others, now I try it. Let's take a bit of white in this too, because I'm going to put some more shadows back in here. We're going to do this a few times. I can hold it pretty flat and get that on there, but I like this. See that this happened right there? As I run out of paint. Now I control that by the angle at which I use my brush. If I rotate my brush up to here, I'm using more of the tip of the brush and it's softer. If I pull down to here, the brush fractures more. See how it really fractures? So as I want it to fade away, I'll rotate the brush down to a flat and stroke quite a few times. And so I want to get these highs and lows of this clapboard siding here. And we have shadows and, you know, tree shadows and all that kind of fun stuff to put on here as well. But I want to do this to break up some of that color. Sometimes I'll do this, but that is nowhere near as fun looking as when you get a little bit of textures. Back here in the corner where it's heading to the shadows, that's all right. But boy, you get those little textures in there and stuff. That just adds so much. So what it's doing here, see, and you look at that, that's adding even more interest to it. Now, we can come back, a little medium beige, a little bit of yellow here. This is where I can sometimes add the extender medium, or this is the open medium. I'll put out a little bit of the open medium here. Don't need too much. And the open medium, what it does is it slows down the drying time, which I'm not really all that needed, but it does also add some transparency to the color because you're thinning it out with a clear paint basically, and so you don't take out all of your lights. So I can come back in here just like this, pull across, see, and start to push back in shadow, but still leave a little bit of that interest. So I'll add some of that, little bits of touches of that through here. Just like that. See, I like this kind of stuff. See that broken little line there that, you know, I pushed it in there a little too hard and, you know, it actually worked out pretty nice. So sometimes out of my brush, a little bit of that red comes out there. And so you see a bit more of the interest and stuff coming through. Let's put some of that right up here. And I'll go right up to the edge of that shadow because we can redo that shadow. And this is what I do in a painting, you know, is I'll work these edges like this back and forth several times, just like this. You know, on this particular painting, I'll probably do this 3 or 4 times, back and forth like this. And I'll start to look for other colors, like pull, you know, when I get into this point of it here, I'm putting on this clapboard side and working it sideways here so to do this, but I want to grab some other colors. I want to grab some of those and beautiful colors that you can add, or like some of these violets out of the sky, you know. You need these into your building. Some nice light violets. Let's add a little open medium so it thins it out a bit. Look to some of your shadows and stuff. But look what that violet does here into your building. Here, we'll pull violets and stuff out of the sky, and it comes back in here and it adds that cool. So everything that we have right up here right now is very warm, and this will help us get some of those cools, especially before we do start to do some of the shadowing that we're going to do here in just a little bit here. But so I'll start to work some of this in here, and just like that, working it back and forth in these colors. And so I might come back here and right on top of that violet come in here and push a little yellow, and look what happens. See, that yellow softens the edge of that violet, and it just gives a little bit more character to the clapboard siding of here of the little church. And that's what we want to do. And so that's going to come from painting it several times back and forth. Okay, all right, so I'm going to do this for just a little bit more, and start some more of that little detail, and then I'm going to go to my granddaughter's piano recital, and I'll come back and I'll finish it up in the morning. And just to show you, somebody asked about, you know, a lot of times when I paint, and you can see it, I post some videos on there. I call it the end of my day paintings. I take my palette from the end of the day and I do something real quick. And I could do that now. But this is the other thing that I do. This is a 12 by 16 multimedia palette, and I have the links of it up there. But this is a, remember going to school and the old cafeteria trays and stuff, you know, that we used to use? Well, the thing is that I like to, when I paint, I don't like to introduce a whole bunch of water. Now, I know some of you like, you know, stay wet palettes, those kinds of stuff. Those are the ways in which we did with acrylics 20 years ago. Okay, new modern, what we call 2K acrylics that were invented really after the year 2000. They're all invented in the last, well, like Heritage, the last 12 years. All of those acrylics, water is not necessary in them. As a matter of fact, these acrylics dry faster if you start putting a bunch of water in them. Put them out on a damp paper towel, or put them out on something that has a sponge that let that water go through that. Now you can always mist, and when I mist like this, if I use these are my old hair, you know, things keep my hair nice. When they get done, I like this because it puts out a real fine little mist, and you can lightly mist the top of them, and those will stay nice. But what I like to do is I take the tray that's on here, and I usually use a little heavier one because I'll have to do it. But you know, I don't know if you can see that, but I spray the top of the lid of this tray here like this, real heavy with light water like this. So just kind of give it a really good rinse. Now, what this does is this is going to keep a very humid environment, and all I do is just flip it upside down and set it over my palette here like this that you see. And what that does is that keeps the air from it. I don't have to have it sealed. Now, you can cover it with plastic wrap and do all that, but by putting the water on the top of the lid like that and just inverting the lid, which covers my entire palette down, and I don't have the water on the paint, I have it in the area. The same thing that happens in a tube. Your paint does not dry out in a tube, and that is because we don't add water to it after every time we open it up. That's because it creates a little, like a terrarium effect inside the inside. The water I mean, it can't evaporate out. Now, it can evaporate out after a week or so sitting under something like this. If I was going to go for longer, maybe I'd use some plastic wrap or something like that. But if it's just going to be here, just 8 hours, 10 hours or so, I'm going to come back to it. I just mist it like that, set that down over the top of it, and it'd be nice. And I haven't introduced a bunch of water into my paint that's going to cause it to dry really fast. The other thing that you can do is to just take your palette knife, take any one of your palette knife, just poke into a little extender, put a little extender into your paint, and just tap that in, and that'll keep that paint real nice as well. But this works really, really well. It all depends on where you live and how hot it is and all that kind of stuff. But that works really well. That'll be really nice. That'll stay like that. And I'll come back in the morning, lift that off, and start painting again. Okay, so I know it's going to keep it nice. All right, so I'm going to take just a little bit of a break here. I'll come back in the morning and we'll finish up this church. Okay, all right, see ya. Hi everyone, welcome back. Well, I added just a little bit of the clapboard siding lines and stuff on there last night, just like I showed you that I did with the other ones before I went to the grandkids recital last night, which was really great. Okay, so now I'm ready to go again, and of course it's the next morning. Now I had covered up the paints here and stuff with this, and it worked really, really well. Most of the water here, there's just a little bit, but a lot of it evaporates, off because left the heat on in here and stuff. But the colors, everything are fine. Yeah, the colors are absolutely fine. If you find that there is a little skin or something like that on it, you can just lightly, and I like to use this, just lightly a little bit of water. You don't want to add a bunch of water to the new generation acrylics and stuff. You don't want to add a bunch of water to it if you want to, really extend their drying time, because water is the fastest drying product in it. So, but these are all fine. There's nothing really wrong with them at all. I'm ready, and I'm going to continue on painting and stuff here. Okay, all right. So let me move this down just a little bit closer here. All right. So what I'm going to do is set up a few more colors. Now I set up also, one of the other things I did was I just took a stroke of light. I had it a little too high, and I noticed it came in underneath the building there, so I added that. And I have my big monitor up there with everything on that, and I can just go ahead and go. Now I'm going to correct just a couple of things. I'm going to take some burnt sienna here. Maybe sometimes I like to, when I start out, add a little extender to this, or water. Either one will work, but I want to widen out this line, this architectural line a little bit. It's a little bit thin. I mean, or it doesn't quite cover what it should be. When I paint for architecture and stuff, like I do here, I like to make sure that you get those lines kind of correct according to the building, because a tiny bit off can just make it look a little wonky or a little weird here. So we want to make sure we get some of that. The other thing I did was I added just a little bit more interest. And one of the things I used was my, my painting knife. You can use a painting knife to scrape some of that down. But I think overall that's looking pretty good. So this morning what I want to do is I'm going to start adding some interest. Before I go in and do any more of the detail here on the church, I could put in the clapboard siding there. I'll show you guys that, but that's just time consuming, and we saw how we're going to do that. But I want to come in and add a bit more color throughout the painting here. So I'm going to go up to like my number 10 here and add a bit more interest and color and stuff to the painting here, and before I get going too far. So I'm going to take some green. We're going to model in some of our different yellows that we have here, a bit of our yellow oxides and stuff here. And I'm just going to pull through like this. I like to set the brush kind of really flat. The fusions work really great flat like this. If you wanted a softer line of color, you pull it with more of the bristle, with more of the hair. But if I pull it with it sitting down a little closer to the surface, it gets a bit of the granulation, which when I'm painting something like this, I like some of that granulation through there. So let's just grab some of the yellows, maybe a touch of the burnt siennas that we have through here. And, you know, we're going to do some up and down, some nice verticals and stuff as well. But I'm just going to touch some of this through. See, when I just do this, see all of the modeling of the color that comes through here. And that's kind of what I'm looking for. And we're going to set it up over the whole thing, and then we'll come back and we'll add shadows and stuff like that. But, you know, to make a really beautiful, especially an architectural painting, something like this, you want to get a lot of brush movement and interest. Because, you know, buildings can be a bit boring. So we try to add a lot of textures and movements and stuff to, you know, so a few verticals here. Textures and movements of color to increase their interest within the painting here. So, you know, just a bit of that there. We'll take a strike or two of this out over to this side. A lot of this is, you know, something when I do this, I will repeat this several times, getting a crossing of the colors, a crossing of those different areas there, so that they're going to get some more interest. And we're going to take some of that right up here underneath where that steps are going to be to the underside of the building. Just little touches of the color so that it adds some interest there. And maybe a little bit. Now there's going to be a little bit of longer grass there. Now there's going to be shadows coming in through here too. Shadows are going to add a tremendous amount to this little painting when we get this done. Let's take some of our beige here. Maybe some white and some medium white. Let's add some lines and textures. I like to work when I do this. I like to get some thicker paint. I'm going to have to add some more colors probably out here today as I work this. So I get some more, lots of more paint. That's what I want to get into this painting. Lots of paint. But I want to take a nice big light texture for the little road that runs through there. And see, by going up over that edge of that grass a bit, I create this edge. And so that the color, that area, that little passage of this color has a lot of interest as it's going from the grass to the dirt. It's changing here. So I just don't have a perfect line. So many times, you know, early on in my career, I would paint with perfect lines. And, you know, it just doesn't happen that way too much. Let's get some green, a little bit of that grass greens in here as well. Some of these nice beiges here. And just create some of that color there. That's pretty good. And we'll create a bit of that grass right up here by the base of that tree. And just let some of that, but you get this. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I look for when I paint a lot of, you know, beaches and side to side. I look for those colors here. And, you know, and it those colors is overriding, but giving these chunks of color here is really nice like that. So, and sometimes it takes several build-ups. Now, sometimes you see me just do that with the knife, like I'll reach in here, let's just grab some of this. Now, I left some of my color here drying on this knife here, so what I'm going to do is just take my scraper tool here and just pull back like that to remove that off of my knife. I forgot about that last night before I left. And we'll just, and so that knife, look at what the knife can do in there as well. The knife is such a wonderful, especially for your, you know, alla prima painters and stuff. The knife just does wonderful stuff, textures and stuff, and it gives a different look than what the, you know, than what the brush does to that. So that's a really good kind of a look there, and we can do that with even some of our grasses and stuff here. Just pull some of that right along that edge, break that edge there. Just looks pretty good. So you get a nice transition between those grasses and the that road. And let's make just a bit of the light through here It might be a bit too heavy, and if I get it too heavy, you can wipe that down, but I generally don't. What I do is I'll take some of my greens here, maybe a bit of that burnt sienna, create a softer one, and pull through. Sometimes at a slightly different angle so I don't just smear it around, and pull through. And let's get just a touch more green in there, touch more of that. So these are all just really great techniques, and you as the artist can utilize these techniques, and then that looks a lot better. In any order, I used to paint with base coat, shadow, highlight, and you work with a medium tone, then you shadow tone, then you highlight tone. And with Alla Prima, that taught me to go from darks and then half tones up to lights. And then, now I use a large variety. But now you can see you get some nice interest, and that's what I want to get. Now, I did like that. I just got it a little heavy. Some lighter like color bands here. Of maybe a bit of yellow. Looks kind of like my lawn sometimes needs water. Here, a bit of that right in there. And we'll let that dry down, because as they dry down, the colors kind of melt together just a bit, incorporating some of what you think is a lot of interest right now doesn't end up being a tremendous amount of interest when it's all said and done. Let's put a bit of that light maybe right over here, and see a bit of your paper towel just pulling up and down and breaking those edges works really nice as well, and gives you some nice texture, some different looks, and it's all interest. Now let's come over here. We'll go back to our brush here for a minute. Let's come over and let's work some of the darker greens. So maybe we'll put a bit of blues in here to cool it, maybe a bit of our violets in here to cool it here, and some burnt siennas here. And let's just start building this. This bush is going to sit mostly into the shadow here, so I don't want to cover up everything I did there, but I want to get a good dose of the feel of the shadows here from this bush. And then we'll add a bit lighter, some lighter greens, and just use I like to touch and push and drag here to create just a bit of that interest into that bush. Lots of color. Let's go more yellow here. Lots of coloring here. And see, push and dab. Try not to make like a dab, 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 dab. Move the brush around a bit and focus in like, okay, there's a little bit more light or something right in there, so I'll focus that. But I try not to create any kind of rhythm or something when I'm painting that. We're going to take that same look like this up here and into the trees here, and I'll use the corner of the brush for some and push around. Now don't get rid of all of that blue. Let's leave some sky holes here. We put this little canopy in and then put the sky in, and working like that just works so well. Let's lighten that up here. So I'll take a bit of the green here in this, and we'll lighten that up a bit. Touch that through here. Just a little difference here. Sometimes maybe even a bit of the blue sapphire into that, so the color's a bit different. Multiple colors, and that's what we're going to do with all of these as we build some of these areas in green and stuff. We'll build that. Like right back here, I'm going to take some burnt sienna and some of that green, maybe a touch of that blue, and the very, very back of this one back here is a little cooler and darker. I'll just use the corner of this big, and see, it does nice. You just scumble it a little bit, just work that out there, and it can make it look, and along with some of those atmospherics that we put in earlier, this now comes in and makes this nice. And a couple areas of heavier color, but it just kind of sets that up. And then we'll move over, maybe grab a bit more of our yellow green here, and we'll grab just a few touches up here by where you see the light here. but not all of it, just a bit. And I'm going to work these trees and stuff back through here just like this. And there's going to be a, we have some wonderful coloring back here. So we'll, when I come back up over here, I'll add some deeper green shadows, maybe just a touch different here. And we have to add those branches and stuff back up there. But this is a good way. See, we've got some atmospheric looks. Got some of these colors, and just this little corner scumbling like that's going to make all kinds of nice little leaves and stuff going on there. Now, some olive artists go more heavier, and that's going to be a signature of what you do. Both of those okay, so they will do just heavy marks of color, and that's a great look too. And as a matter of fact, maybe I'll add some of that in here as I get going. But that I kind of read on each painting what I might need. So, you would come in heavier like this. So here comes some of that light, and I'll leave some of that other color there, but I'll just kind of, use more of the flat of the brush. Gives you a different look here. And that's your job, is to create this interest, for the painting here. So I'm going to do that, and I'll add some of that around the painting. I don't want to use the same green absolutely everywhere, because then I'll just flatten out the painting. So we want to concentrate some of the burnt siennas, some of the different colors that we're going to see in here, okay, on this painting when we do that. So I'm going to do that now. I'll show you a few clips along the way. I'm just going to do this with some greens, burnt siennas, some yellows, start building that so we can come back in, work on the building, work on the trunk of our eucalyptus, okay? So we'll just take a few minutes and play a nice little music, and I'll show you some of that, okay? And I'll see you guys in a few minutes. Hi everyone, welcome back. Well, I was just putting on some of the window detailing that you see, and I go back and forth, small brush, large brush, and lights and darks to shape up the windows. Now, what you don't want to do when you do this is to get them too precise. So I like to kind of blur out a little bit some of the architecture of it, some of the window panes and everything. Some are a little bit wider, broken little edges and stuff, and that keeps it from being stuck on. If you get it, it's really easy. Some people I see tape them and do all that kind of stuff, which you can, but if you get them too precise, then it doesn't look as painterly here. And so I like it to be a little bit painterly, but yet it also has to be, which is the most important. So you can have like blur edges and stuff like that, but it has to be architectural light. So you should have like architectural correct. So they should have, they should line up, and you should, try to be a little careful, like if you're going to put up to these arches and stuff that are up on here, try to be a little bit correct with some of that, and but work back and forth between your lights and darks. So here's a little dark. I can just clean up this lower, and I can go back and set more light in there if I want to, but I think that'll be fine. And so I just work back and forth. You saw me put on some of the clapboard, then I come back with some medium white, and then finally we'll go with the medium white. And this is my little number 2 fusion filbert. I love this one, along with the synthetic, because it just does a real good job. See, and I can lift the pressure here. It's just the width of these little clapboards here, and I can lift the pressure and cause some granulation and some variation. The big thing is getting some of this variation. So you hold your brush flat, just like I do with the grasses and stuff like that, and you just add some of this color. Now sometimes I'll come down and just blur through it like this a little bit, so you still get the feeling of the clapboard sides, but you can get a little bit of vertical movement of your lights through the building here as well, which is a nice thing to add. So maybe I'll put on a few quick ones like this and just blur through, just lightly scumble through, grabbing some of this. This is why I love, and look at how much interest that adds to that building. This is why I love to work with acrylics, because I'm doing this while it's dry. Now I can add some open medium here. We can come back up onto this side, the light side, and just suggest some of those here as well. You got just a few marks. You just need a few of those marks here, and we can suggest a little bit of the light hitting on that. We can go back and we put in that light corner there, so we can go back and just touch right into that light corner. If you can't get this, if you've got so much light that you can't get that light corner to come off, now mine comes off there okay, but if you can't, just thin out a little bit of your shadow, which is like burnt siennas, greens, medium beiges and stuff, and just drop a little bit of a shadow there, and you see it pop out the architecture of it. So when you're painting with the architecture, I like to, as I'm putting this on, I like to, vary the colors. I like to vary their placements. I like them to get what we call granulated edges. They're not perfect. Here, let's add a bit more yellow as we come back through here and add just a bit. But see, this kind of taking just a few minutes, and it takes just a few minutes to just granulate. Drag that little brush, fusion brush, kind of flat there like that. Just adds lots of lots of interest to the side of your building. Now we have some more light right over onto this side. It's closer to the light struck side, and I'm going to put a bit of open medium in that so it slides a bit better. See, I like that kind of, so you can get some of that transparency with that, and so it doesn't wipe out. The transparency is kind of important. It doesn't wipe out all the coloring and stuff that you have here underneath. So I'll give just a bit of that light feeling there. and to the clapboard siding there, but then a little bit of that vertical really helps. Let's put some medium white, maybe a touch of our yellow here, and pull back across the front of that, and see that nice broken color and stuff. Just adds like the highlights and shadows of the wood, the light hitting it a little different there. The shimmers and sparks of it, which we like here. And let's just drop a bit of that right in here. So sometimes I'll use the brush end. Sometimes if I feel that brush end is too precise, I'll roll over as flat as I can get this brush and pull that down. See, and that just gives a nice, and it's breaking up the architecture of it here. And I'll look for a few places to come through and just drag that, breaking up some of that there. And all of that work you do there, putting some of the violets in, some of the greens, some of the washes of burnt sienna and stuff, that's just all going to help you so much in the look of your building, and especially the age of it, but the interest of it, the visual interest. You want to carry colors. Get some colors in there. Get the idea of the clapboard siding here, but then get some of those colors in there. So I may want just a little bit more yellow up here, just here and there. See, I hit some of that dirty part of my palette. Some of those other colors will come off. And look at how pretty that is, adding that in there. See, that just adds that nice work. And that's what you look for, that kind of broken color and stuff there. And again, you can scrub up and down just a bit, just lightly. This is called scumbling. Technique called scumbling. Scumble your colors a bit here. Pull those across, and so you get some of that nice old look to it. And the more you do, the better that building starts to look, okay? All right. Let's go in, and so I'm going to do that, and I'll go over and I'll work on that one over there as well, but setting it more into a shadow and stuff. But before we get too far into this, let's go over and paint this amazing eucalyptus up over here. So I'm going to be looking right up here at my monitor, and I'm going to find some of the light colors, which I really wanted that medium white and that a bit of yellow right up here. I want this to advance up into the front of my painting. So I'm going to get it quite light right up in here. And I'm going to use this, I'm going to use as large a brush as I can as I go to paint this, so I can get some nice colors in there. I see it shift more to a medium beige down here, so I'll drop in some medium beige, and I want to paint this very rough. In other words, not smooth. So you'll see me setting the brush down quite a bit and doing those kinds of looks there. Maybe even touching into some, let's get some burnt sienna, some beige over here. Some of our darker, a little bit of darker blues with that burnt sienna is going to really help us with some of our shadows and stuff like that as well. So we want to just drag it like this. See, we get that just starts to look more like that that wonderful eucalyptus. But keep the colors. Don't play too long. Keep these colors fresh like this. The edges are there as the as you're, you may blur when you have a connection between the medium beige here and some of your shadows. You may just take your brush like that and blur it across there, across just the flow of the shadow a bit. But you don't want to blend it. So you can blur across it a bit to get some of that color and that interest, but you don't want to blend it. Now, that might be a bit too light because that's really kind of the shadow side. So I'll come back over that with some beige. Let's look to our next color, which will have some of that blues and that. And look at that. See, I just came in here. This is a mottled color, not mixed. This mottled of the burnt sienna and those blues. And look how that comes off like that and gives that look of that beautiful eucalyptus there. Let's get a bit of the light, some of the burnt sienna. That's that lighter tan kind of beautiful color that we see tracking through the tree here as well. Here we go. Maybe make a bit of a shadow here, right up there like that. And I'll tap in little areas of the burnt sienna, which is the pure burnt sienna, which is just adds a tremendous amount of interest there to that. And, so I'll come down here, model some of that, model some of these yellows down through here as you come in through here. Just tap and model some of that color. Makes that interesting bark here onto the tree. Let's get that light in there. Now we're going to go medium white and some medium beige here to make that. And this is going to be very warm, so we're going to want to get some grays in here as well. We'll just come in, use different parts of your brush and just kind of drag that up and through here. Tap along the edge. When those colors are going to connect right in there, just tap along the edge and break that edge just a bit. Let's get some more medium beige right down through here. So that'll just touch right down through some of that bark right there. Just use the corner of your brush and drag that a bit. Turn your brush over so you get a different look. Don't paint too long with just one area. Move the brush around a bit. Okay, let's increase the light right here, and then we'll need to add some grays as well. Texture. So I'm going to pick up some heavy-duty paint here. And I want to get some textures, but this is what I like that little bit of that light really coming off there. Matter of fact, we can even go a touch lighter with some whites right here. Let's push right into that and pull that up. Push and pull. You see me do that in some landscapes. The push and pull gives you a different look to it. There. That's kind of pretty, but see, that really brings this tree right out here into the front, right up in front of this church, which is what I want, because that's where it sits, is right up in front of the church. So we're going to do it through value, but mostly through interest, brush interest, textures, that kind of stuff coming forward here. Really makes a lot of interest to it. Let's get it a little bit grayer right in there. Just touch a bit of that in there. Some different color, tone here. There like that. That's kind of neat. But maybe some yellows with that light right up over here. Drag that through. See, that just makes a real, just use a different part of your brush. This is that big brush. This is an 8. You can use a 10, 8 or a 10. And so I use different parts of it. So I'll sometimes use the chisel, sometimes use this flat of it here, dragging it around. And it just adds beautiful interest to it. Let's lighten that up, maybe even a bit of white right up here and start that light kind of comes up, kind of tracks up and goes right up here up through this area here. Push it off a bit. Create some different coloring. Let's lighten up this edge here. Maybe push that off a bit. There we go. A little bit more light. Maybe a medium white, even some of this gray here. This gray would be great. Right in there too is a softer light right there. There we go. Nice interest in there. Now this other one has a little bit of a lighter, almost an orange. Let's take some of this. That Diarylide's getting a little stiff here. Bit of the Diarylide and some of that burnt sienna. Pretty color. Get that orange up into that bark there. Yeah, that's pretty coloring right down in there. really helps. And I look to see just how much some of this just pops this tree nice and forward here. Okay, we'll touch some of that. Right around like that. There we go. And a little softer, maybe a bit of that gray, wrapping right around this corner here, this edge of it. And that gives me a pretty nice, look at that, at this real nice eucalyptus here. And I'll do the same thing on the other ones. I'm going to make more of a gray right here. And just pull some of that through. There's a little knot hole there. Some of that right through here. There. That just gives it real pretty. I could have a bit more light in the tree itself compared to the other one. So I'm going to pull some of this light. Even some nice texture here. Pull some of that out. Here. Wherever the colors are connecting, I'll just... or overriding, I'll just tap just a bit. I don't want to blend too much. I just want to tap the colors so I get so you see the colors override each other, blur the edges just a bit, but I don't want to blend them together. I'll lose that edge. So now you look at that and yeah, that looks pretty good with that with that light like that. Maybe a bit more light. We'll watch this whole thing as it dries down. It'll dry about a value or so darker. So we'll watch the whole thing here as it starts to dry down to see if we hit our mark. I'm going to put a little more orange right down here. Right there like that. That's kind of a pretty eucalyptus tree. So this one I'm going to paint the same way, but it's more browns and grays, and I'll put in these little trees back here. And then we'll come back in and talk about some of the shadows and do a little bit more detail, okay? So give me just a couple minutes. You don't think you need to see anything. It's just going to do the same thing, but I'll do it a little bit more atmospheric. All right? Okay, and I'll see you guys in a minute. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Okay, so, I added a bunch of these little twigs and stuff off of that other tree. I also lost the ability to talk, but then I added this one in over here. Just some of the light colors pulling through, same technique as I used over here on this eucalyptus. Now I'm just going to go through it. One of the things that a lot of olive artists, myself included, like to use is our knife to clean up, any areas like this looks a little bit wonky just a bit. So we can use our knife, running it up and down to create that nice straight line there, and then just, blur off some of that color. And I don't mind a bit of it just, coming over and into the church there just a bit as well. But you can use this to kind of straighten up your perspective of your lines a bit, and it just adds quite a bit to it. Let's take some white and just reinforce that line there on the break of the edge of the church. Sometimes it takes a little bit, you roll your knife slightly flat and you'll get more color. Roll it up onto the edge and you get the finer color. I put some right across here like this. There's a little bit of, like decorations and stuff on the, up at the top. How much of that you're going to add is up to you, but a little bit here and there just adds to the overall effect of your painting, the interest of your painting. So you can pull across. That knife just does, like we say, different types of textures and stuff. And it's really nice. It really does, pop some of those edges and stuff. So sometimes like right along that front edge, right up in here, right against that shadow where we want to build that building up a bit, that just, puts on a bit of that paint, and we can soften it out. You can, tap through it with some grays and stuff, or here I'll just add another little tone right in there and push, and see it just gives that interest, that extra little bit of interest, and an extra little bit of texture stuff that the brush doesn't always do and stuff. So gives it a different look. Let's just take that right along this edge here, just a bit, slowly rotate our knife down to get that edge a little bit cleaner there. I like that. So you can do that anywhere throughout the building. Now, what we have to do is we have to come in and we have to add some of the shadows. The shadows are what really makes this painting, I think. And so right in here, for example, we'll take our green, maybe some burnt sienna, and a little bit of blue. Here, a little bit, maybe even a touch of red into that. That makes, but we want this cool, so some red violet is very nice in there as well. Green, red, violet. Let's thin this out. Let's add some extender to this as well. Really thin it out here. And we're going to use this mostly at what I'm going to do with this real thin color is do several applications of it across here like this and kind of look where my shadows are onto the painting. There'll be some right back in here. Oh, I got to add the stairs. Don't let me forget. I got to add those stairs, or else no one has any way to get into the church. We'll add some broken lines of that. Leave a bit of the light color coming through. This kind of comes out there a bit. So I'll run my brush back and forth as it gets to the thin areas of those shadows here. Sometimes I take my paper towel and I tap through and break through those edges there. But that just gives a nice color there for the shadow. But what we want to get that nice interest to our shadow is we'll leave the little light holes going through it every once in a while. You'll see some of those. Sometimes they close up, little light holes. That's what gives you the really nice look of the shadows here. And we'll put in a little heavier. We'll come right out through here like this, right over the edge there. That's kind of nice. Sometimes you wipe through them just a bit. It also works to take a fusion brush and lightly go through so you can pick up some of the green color, green toning color coming through. There's a bit of the shadows over here. Now a lot of alla prima artists would also use the blue into here. You know, I talked to you so many times about carrying color. You have the blue of the sky that should be carried down into your landscape here as well. And let's just pull some of this right across the little edge there. But so I'll do that, and I'll be doing that up into the front here as well, just like this, scumbling this on. You know, picking out some areas of additional dark that I might have coming through so that violet cools that down. But, you know, you can always take a bit of that, like that sapphire and the light here, maybe a bit of the phthalo into it. Make some light blues and add those into that shadow there too, because that, just little whispers of that, that's just nice, cool color. And it looks good as long as you don't get it too heavy like I just did right there. So I'll back that out a bit. But that just all looks a little different. Add some shimmers. You can add some of those shimmers back into some of those areas through here. So you got a lot of area of the shadows that's going to be up in here. And this is where blue would look good as well as we create some of the shadows here onto the road. So I'll, take my color here, and I'll scumble this around. I'll probably use a little bit bigger brush than what I'm using here, but I'll scumble this around like this to get some highs and lows of it and create some of the shadows that you see here. And then I'll take a bit of that blue too and add that every once in a while in here. And see, that just pulls the harmony of the colors down here as well, okay? So I'll be doing that. We need to put some of these cool shadows here onto the building, and maybe we increase the violet, the yellow and the burnt sienna into that. Maybe just a touch of blue as well. Thin it out here. Thin out this color here, darker, and a little bit transparent. We'll pick up a shadow that's going to go right in there, and then we will just work the thin color here back and forth with our brush. And what this does is it makes a more fractured edge. If I'm real close to the shadow, the edge is not as fractured. If I'm further away, the shadow, the edge gets a little fractured. So we'll do that right here like this. Leave some sky holes through it. We'll tap that around. Leave some of that light holes and stuff that are going to go through it there. Like that, the shadow here. And maybe over this window right there. Right into some of that area. Leave little spaces and stuff. It's just really kind of fun. You have this shadow, so I'll be putting some of that around. We have that shadow that's up over here, and it goes up against this side. And you can soften some of this out or just pull through with just a bit of your paper towel, which softens it out, but that gives you this little shadow here. Shadows are so important. And when I first started painting landscapes and stuff like that, I didn't concentrate too much on the shadows. And now, especially, boy, when you're painting architecture here like this, and buildings and stuff, shadows are so important. Very, very important. We'll just push that little shadow right over that edge there. Just like that, because they're going to add a tremendous amount of interest. But to keep it all consistent, you should run just a bit of your shadow color. Whatever you decide, whether it's violet, some artists will use the violet, whether it's a darker color of your building color or your main color, whatever you decide that you carry. You'll see different artists use different things. I usually like to have a little bit of blues and violets into it, keeping it kind of cool here. But I will, slide it over to the yellows like I'm doing, for the yellow objects and stuff. And we'll push that on. So you'll see these shadows start coming everywhere. So I'm going to take, a good 20 minutes probably to put all the shadows in and around. Then we'll come back and look at our last clouds and sky and everything like that and wrap up this painting, okay? All right. Here goes the shadows. Hi everyone, welcome back. Okay, so there you have it. I put some of those shadows in and around, put a couple of little bit of lights right back up on top of that. And I did put a bit more white right up here by the cloud that's right there. And I just scumbled it in. I took my kind of a dirty place on my palette here. And I just use a brush and I scumble it in. Now it will dry a little darker, so this will look a little light. But I just do that if I'm within a cloud structure that I've already built, I just go scumble it. If I am, putting something on, I'll put a little extender on and blur it out a little bit as well. But since I'm already within that structure there, I'll just scumble that a bit. And that pulls that interest right in there through the painting. So as the light coming in through here like this, this might be a little dark. I'll see when I get done. Those shadows that are right there might be just a bit. I added a couple of leaves at the top. That's like the reference photo. And like I said, those of you that are part of our membership that help support the channel, I'll put the reference photo up. That reference photo nice and big for you to see it. You can download and paint it and paint your own little version. But now it's just a matter of how much architectural interest that I want to give the painting. You can come in like I did right here, and right back here is I took some yellow oxide and a little bit of the burnt sienna. We'll just take it over here with a bit of extender, and it's just an artistic thing. Some artists do it and stuff. You just come back and just glaze a little and touch little bits of color to help, increase the interest and stuff of your painting. And that's just an individual artistic expression, how much you want to do. Like right in here might be kind of nice to have a bit of the yellow, coming through right there in the church, especially coming out of the shadows. is where you usually see that. So I put some of that nice glowy little color right in there like that. Out of the shadows I might see. And I just use extender, and it's just a thin wash. And you know, it just adds just a little bit more. But there you got it. That's what it looks like from 8 feet. That's camera 1 sitting at 8 feet. It's kind of a fun painting, especially I just love to do this big guy right up front here, this big eucalyptus. And I might come back and add just a couple of small medium white and white little touches, you know, here and there, just to add just a bit more of that nice contrast right up there, really bringing it forward. Really a fun one to paint with those, and when those two colors are coming together, you know, meeting together there, you know, bringing in and just tapping along those edges and stuff. But it's a fun painting. The whole painting time here was about, for me, was about 4 hours or so. So that's pretty good for a painting like this. And of course, if you can always put a little bit more interest into it, but I think it has a nice interest. Gives you a little bit of the structure. We'll paint some more of it. Some of you have asked for some cityscapes and stuff, and some more farm buildings and everything. And we'll do some of that where we can take a building like this and simplify it, you know, a bit more. Little things like I might add just a touch more in there. Sometimes a real fun painting like this, have you ever had that happen to you? A real fun painting is just really hard to stop. You just want to enjoy the painting of it. But there you guys go. Okay, so if you like this building, if you like this type of painting, you want to see some more of these architectural structures, landscapes with buildings and stuff into them, just, you know, make sure you hit that video like and leave me a comment on there, okay? It's the more people that comment, the more people that like stuff, the more that we'll put that, you know, that those types of subjects into some of the things we paint. All right. So I have some more rose studies coming, and I have my Western that I'm going to do, and we're going to be drawing. I'm going to sit down and show you how to draw a horse, how I do it, okay, and some different ways in which you can do that. To get your image onto your surface ready to paint, especially for you, the beginners. You'll enjoy that video. So I'm going to show some different ways to do that, okay? All right, so make sure you like it. Make sure you liked it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. I have another one coming in a couple days, and we'll do that Western, and then we'll do some more rose studies, some more flower studies. I have a big couchoir. You really like that one couchoir I did last year, so I'm going to bring a couchoir back, okay? All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Thanks for joining us, and I'll see you on the next one.